So welcome back to International School History. Modern authoritarian regimes are most commonly defined in terms of what they're not. Now, first and foremost, they're not democratic. So if we want to understand authoritarianism, first we need to understand democracy. The ancient Athenian understanding of democracy involved the direct participation of all citizens in the political system. Of course, there are some modern democracies which maintain high levels of participation through referenda, for example. Switzerland has regular votation based on popular initiatives. There are even some cantons where citizens elect laws direct themselves.
Democracy doesn't get much more open than this. Every April, voters in Appenzell in northeastern Switzerland flood the central square to elect local leaders and judges, not by casting ballots, but raising their hands.
But in general, this is not the norm. Generally speaking, the modern version of democracy is representative, one in which citizens choose professional politicians to do the governing for them. The right of all citizens to elect their government is therefore what most people understand by democracy. But if we are to fully understand authoritarianism, we need to understand that democracy means more than voting once every 5 years. Democracy has, I think, 4 key characteristics. Now, to be a good democracy, you have to have fair elections, accountable officials, universal rights, and equality. So the first characteristic of democracy is the importance of free and fair elections. This means that elections involve the participation of all citizens in a way that allows the individual to express their choice of representative without fear of recrimination. So the ballot has to be secret. No one can know who you voted for. The right to vote should also happen with predictable regularity and at different administrative levels, from, say, the village, the commune, right the way through to national or indeed transnational elections. Elections often occur in authoritarian states, but they take place on an uneven electoral playing field. Dictatorship may prevent elections from being fair by intimidating the opposition, denying their right to campaign, or by vote rigging.
Я видел, как эти люди, председатель, заместитель председателя, просто заталкивали бюллетени в урны.
President Lukashenko has now been elected 5 times. Many previous challengers have ended up in prison, and more than 1,000 opposition activists have been arrested ahead of this election.
The next important point in a democracy is that elected officials must be both accountable and removable. This requires the political system to have an inbuilt official opposition whose job it is to hold the government to account and to replace the government when it loses the support of the people. Holding a government to account means that an official opposition in the legislature, that is the parliament, publicly examines in detail the policies and actions of the government. Now, this is designed to encourage efficient governance, but also to prevent the corruption that is typical of authoritarian regimes.
So is there anything preventing me from holding stocks, say, in an oil or gas company, and then writing laws to deregulate that industry and cause, that could potentially cause the stock value to soar and accrue a lot of money in that time?
You could do that.
So I could do that. I could do that now with the way our current laws are set up.
If the government loses the support of the people, as a result of this scrutiny, it must resign. As the great English parliamentarian Tony Benn once said, if one meets a powerful person, Adolf Hitler, Joe Stalin, or Bill Gates, ask him 5 questions.
What power have you got? Where did you get it from? In whose interest do you exercise it? To whom you're accountable, and how can we get rid of you? And if you can't get rid of the people who govern you, you don't live in a democratic system.
So the third important characteristic of a democracy is that all citizens, including ethnic, social minorities, etc., have certain fundamental rights that are guaranteed by law and usually written down in a state constitution. For example, the right to worship the religion of your choice, or the right to privacy in the home. These are basic rights in democracy. And it's freedom of speech or freedom of the media to criticise those in position of authority that are amongst the very first freedoms to be denied in any authoritarian state, largely because they are amongst the easiest to manipulate.
The right to freedom of expression has been recognised by this year's Nobel Peace Prize, which has been awarded to two journalists known for their hard-hitting investigations, which have angered their country's powerful elites and leaders. Maria Ressa from the Philippines and Dmitry Muratov from Russia have both faced significant threats. The committee commended their work, saying that independent and fact-based journalism served to protect against the abuse of power and lies.
The state doesn't need to directly control the media. I mean, if the media is funded by an economic elite and supported by advertising revenue provided by that same economic elite, then of course, democracy is undermined by an economic elite controlling the media. And this continues to be one of the most powerful ways that democracy is undermined today. The fourth and last important characteristic of democracy is equality. The state must respect each individual equally, irrespective of their social position, their political affiliation or economic status. Everyone must be treated equally before the law. And there must be a degree of social cohesion, a sense of community between all members of society. To help enforce this, the judiciary, the system of courts that interpret and apply the law, must be independent from the executive, from the government. In addition, the institutions that enforce the law, the police and the army, must be accountable to civilian authorities of the elected representatives. Now, in many authoritarian states, the judiciary is too weak and the army too politicised to guarantee the equality of all citizens before the law. Now, one of the most important recent challenges to democracy in Western society is the growing social and economic inequalities between citizens and the consequent lack of what I've described as social cohesion. A society in which there is significant social and economic inequality cannot be democratic because the existence of social and economic elites will inevitably undermine the principle that all in society should enjoy the basic rights that all share. If there is an exclusive private education system or private health insurance that guarantees significantly different life opportunities to its citizens, well, this can only undermine the social cohesion, making it much more difficult to guarantee that all voices will be heard equally. It is no coincidence that today, in countries that appear top of the table in the Quality of Life Index, also rank highly for the quality of their democracy. So that's democracy and its relationship to authoritarianism. I think in the next lesson I'd like to look at the main features of modern authoritarianism and explain why it's important that you're able to identify them. Thanks for watching. Architecture of amnesia, scare the people with hysteria. Architecture of amnesia, history